Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the MetaManiacs show. This is the podcast for and by trading card game maniacs. I'm your host, Dan Green, and I'm joined this week by, we have Mike Piper back from his Vegas expedition.
Hey, everyone.
We have Dylan Straube, of course, as usual.
How's it going, ladies, gentlemen, and others?
And once again, joining us is Kevin Kerrigan.
Greetings, World Warriors.
All right, so we kind of teased this last week, but what we're talking about this week is the Perfect TCG again. We kind of just decided after talking last week that there was just a lot more to talk about, so we figured we would do part two. And with this one, well, Jordan is out. Actually, we're all very happy for Jordan because today he is getting married. So, ladies, he's off the market.
Mazel tov.
So excited for him.
Yes, definitely. And Mike was able to make it today, so we thought we'd get some of Mike's opinions on what the perfect trading card game looks like. So, just to kind of kick things off, I know last week we talked, we talked about a wide variety of things. One of the things that I think we talked the most about was this idea of TCGs falling, actually really any game, when you think about it, falling somewhere in between a realm of abstraction and simulation, right? And the idea here being that if you missed it, go listen to the last episode to hear us talking about that more in depth. But to just kind of create a gradient for us to talk about when I get Mike's opinion on this stuff a little bit. The simulation end of things. Well, let's start the abstraction end of things. You think about a game like War, like the classic card game War, is probably one of the most extreme ends of abstraction because you're abstracting a fight, a war between two sides, but really all you're doing is flipping cards and the bigger number wins. And I guess that means one side's strength is greater than the other or whatever. On the
What is it good for?
Thanks for the reference, Kevin. On the simulation end of things, we have, basically, if you think of any modern trading card game, it's much more closer on the simulation side of things where they're often going to take, the Dragon Ball Z trading card game by Score Panini, they're trying to make you choose a character and choose a fighting style and throw punches at each other. And there's all these elements of flavor that are taking place in order to try and create a simulation of actually doing whatever that card game is. So, long-winded explanation, and apologies for repeating some of that information, but I wanted to bring that up as sort of the baseline because with Mike here, I wanted to talk to Mike specifically to start about his opinion on what we chimed in last week, where I was making everyone choose what do you like more, the simulation end of things or the abstraction end of things, because Mike, you are our premier Dragon Ball Super player, and you're finally back here with us, so I can't pick on the game anymore because you're available.
Doing plenty, to be clear.
But in addition, Mike, you also were part of our group playing the Panini and the Score, and you played Score Dragon Ball Z back in the day. So you have a great insight into what you might prefer between Score and Panini, which we decided was more simulation versus Dragon Ball Super, which is more abstraction. So Mike, take it away. What do you like between the two? And what do you like when it comes to simulation versus abstraction?
Well, definitely, I'm more of a fan of the simulation type. I'm one of those where, I like to pick up the card game, whatever the license may be. So Yu-Gi-Oh! or Digimon or, even Dragon Ball Super. I want to feel I'm picking up the deck and that's my character. That's my kind of think like a fighting game. So a lot of times when you pick up a fighting game, a lot of your really, high level people that do the fighting game, they find a character and they relate to that character. They relate to its style. And it's kind of the same thing when I play card games. I want to be able to, that character should have a style and kind of simulate very closely to the show. And I think, honestly, compared to the Panini game, compared to the Dragon Ball Super game, I think Dragon Ball Super actually does that more so than the Panini game. So I think very much so.
Interesting.
Hot take.
This is a hot take.
And I'm going to tell you why. No, I'll tell you why. The reason for it is when I first picked up the Dragon Ball Super card game and I played it, compared to the Panini game, like, with the Dragon Ball Super card game, like, when it comes to fusion, or evolving, or EX evolving, like, I feel more like, okay, hey, I'm paying an energy, I'm putting a higher level card on to do more power. Or if I'm doing fusion, like, you're discarding, a Goten and a Gotenks from your hand to fuse into the super powerful battle card, that's got a much higher cost that you wouldn't have to spend nearly as much energy on. I feel like the Dragon Ball Super card, at least in that aspect, they simulate that.
In that one mechanic.
Certainly with fusion, which wasn't touched on Panini.
Now,
let me respond to this.
Okay,
So,
go ahead.
Yeah. No. I totally see where you're getting at, right? Like, I totally understand where you're coming from. But if we're gonna, let's compare, because like Dylan was saying, Panini didn't get to fusion dancing, any of that stuff before it ended. But what Score did was you played as Goten or Trunks or whatever, for example. You had to then get the ally, who's the other one, Kid Trunks or Goten, in play. You had a card called the Fusion Dance that you had to resolve, so they had to perform the dance. And then you got to put Gotenks into play. And he lasted for a few turns. And then it ended. Mike, I just have to say straight up, I think that is a much closer simulation of fusing.
Especially for a few turns. That's really flavorful.
Hold on.
Okay.
And also, there's a lot of other games that use the concept of put two cards together to make a thing. Yu-Gi-Oh has that. It's not necessarily a specific thing to Dragon Ball. It's pretty common across card games.
I think that's a fair point too. But Mike, you get a chance to respond.
Yep. Okay. So
That's
you got to remember, man, you're absolutely right. You're right on that. But for my fellow other people who played the Score game, the Panini game, what you'll remember is they also had other ways to fuse, which were just like that. With Gotenks, that was cool. For 5 turns, they got cool.
It was
Let's
5 turns.
Vegito.
So to be clear, 5 turns. I'm just curious. Was it 5?
I didn't remember the number.
Was
it 5?
Yeah. See, I feel like Mike would probably. He's good.
I think
with
it was
that sort of
5.
stuff.
Yeah.
Was it 5 of your turns or 5 turns total?
I think it was.
I feel
5.
like it might have been back and forth. Like you had 3, they had 2.
5
Yeah.
combats or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now let's look at the other ways that Score did the fusion. Let's look at Vegito. And for people who remember Vegito, you had the same thing, the Goku and Vegeta, but then it was a Potara, like the Potara games, right? Now, the biggest complaint with it in Score, which just totally they botched it, is they had it where you could play a location. I think it was like Majin Buu's stomach, I forget the exact name, that you could defuse. But you could also literally, if you played that Potara Fusion earring card, I could just say, "Oh, I'm going to remove that non-combat card. You defuse." And you're just like,
but that sounds flavorful though.
Yeah, it makes sense in the context of the show.
What does happen if the earring is taken off? Does that defuse them automatically?
In Dragon Ball Super,
they can't take it off.
They changed it. I mean, hold on. This is in original Dragon Ball Z. As soon as you put the Pataras on, you are fused forever. Like that's
right.
To be
they
clear.
retconned it in Super. I remember that, but I guess it
because
just
Super's
like,
bad.
What if your ear was cut off?
Yes,
what if you're
thank you, Dylan.
I love Dragon Ball Super, but it's bad.
And then to even go further, Dan. So when Dragon Ball
go further beyond
beyond.
Yeah, when they went into GT, you're talking about the fusion dance, right? Okay.
Yep.
Do you know what they did with Gogeta when it came to the fusion dance? Do you think they copied what Gotenks did? No. They did the exact same. It was it was just a card that was out that said they fused. There was no turn counter, and it was like, oh, if you remove it, they defuse. Like,
yep.
The one thing that I will give Score, that is Score and Panini for that game that was really, really good, that I love the mechanic, was the life card. Like when you took attacks and it was like you're actually taking cards off the top of your deck, and it's like your deck gets smaller. You feel that. I will tell you right now, like that was I love that engine. Extremely simulate. Like I felt like I was in the show. But overall, when I play the Dragon Ball Super card game, when I look at and just take a look at it, look at the artwork from Bandai, the Dragon Ball Super card game. Look at that
great Dokkan art.
Yeah, go back and look at
Dokkan is great art.
Does.
It sounds like Brave Exvius for Final Fantasy. They produce great art for their mobile games.
Cards.
Exactly.
Yeah, look at the Panini cards, and it's just. And I'm not saying like that it's a bad game. Don't get me wrong. I love both games,
Mike,
but if looking at a simulated purpose.
May I interject for just one moment? I have just a quick question for you. Okay, so can we agree that generally cards are flavored by their text and abilities more than they're flavored by their artwork? Or like, because I would say that I believe that it's like 60-40. Like, cause I'm heavily influenced. Like, I love it when I see like good art that like really like that really jives with the to bring Jordan into the conversation. That really jives with the flow of the ability. Like when I think of art that really goes with the card text, I think of the Saiyan elbow drop. Yeah. Where Nappa's just bashing the dude in the head, right? And you do it a couple more times, and it's a ruthless card effect. It's a great little art where you just see someone just getting just ruined. I can't remember who Nappa's elbow dropping, so just to clarify, would you believe that the text would matter in general more than the art / UI design?
Correct. When creating it, yeah.
Okay. So I'm just wondering, for clarification, where does the art for Panini versus Super come into the simulation side? Because I know we were talking about the simulation. Why do you believe that? I mean, I'm not saying that. Hey, I honestly, both have great options. I personally, I'm a little turned off by a bit of the the fan created characters and stuff like that from Dragon Ball Super. I'm a little turned off by Dragon Ball Hero stuff. I can't get behind that. I can get behind Super
original
because
character, do not steal.
Toriyama is behind it. Toriyama does a lot of the character design, especially New Broly. New Broly is like one of the best things to happen to Dragon Ball in 20 years.
Absolutely.
But I don't personally believe like that. I like that other stuff, but like all the unique art. I dig. I'm an artist. I love great depictions of characters. I mean, look behind you.
Yeah,
right? Like, it's great. Ultra Instinct Goku is a way better design than Super Saiyan 4 Goku. Even though Super Saiyan 4 Goku is super cool and super unique, the golden Ozaru that led to Super Saiyan Goku is super boring and lame.
Yeah.
So like when there's some highs and some lows. But the screen capture of Panini Z, is super cool too. Like I really dig seeing like image parts of my favorite show, but like they don't really jive together. I'm just wondering why you would think that one version of it would help your brain feel like it's more like the anime than the other version. Because the one is actually straight from the show. To be clear,
can I say something really quick?
Yep, go ahead.
5 seconds.
Yeah, just once. UFS also does a great job, especially from their sets that are based on shows, where it's like, oh, that's literally what happened in the scene.
Here's what I tell myself, like why I think Dragon Ball Super simulates a lot better than the score game.
Okay.
And this is and I mean, you can agree or disagree with me, but this is what I tell myself.
I intend to.
If you look at the score and Panini game, let's pretend that the engine is not Dragon Ball Z.
Sure.
Let's pretend it's anything.
I totally agree.
Right?
Let's go with that.
Let's say let's say it's let's put it with Street Fighter.
JoJo.
Or whatever. Would that engine work? Would that engine work with any other game besides Dragon Ball Super?
Yes.
Or Dragon Ball?
Yes.
Okay.
Hard yes.
Hard yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now let's look at the Dragon Ball Super card game.
No. Hard yes for the Dragon Ball Super card game. I believe you misspoke.
Oh, I was talking about the Panini game. When I look at the Dragon Ball Super card game,
hard yes.
I look at all of the, like, for example,
literally anything.
Wasn't the Dragon Ball Super card game lifted from another card design? Like, not to downplay it, but I believe that a lot of elements were pulled from. I believe Jordan and Dan mentioned this before, right? Right.
The Dragon Ball Super card game has a number of elements, much like most modern card games.
Yeah, I'm not trying to talk it down. I'm just saying Bandai pulled from like a.
It is an amalgamation of multiple mechanics. Like, it uses the
Naruto CCG.
The energy system from Kaijudo/Duel Masters, where any card can be placed upside down as an energy.
Yeah.
It is a dude's attack game, much like, Magic, everything basically.
Mm-hmm.
It uses a life system that is just a flip around on the prize system from Pokemon, more or less. It's,
It reminds me a lot of Pokemon, and I don't even play that.
And Shields and Duel Masters.
I feel like when I play the Dragon Ball Super card game, my big
Kevin, good call.
With the artwork, and then even the way they design a lot of the leaders. Like, for example, I mean, people know me from my Zamasu deck. I mean, that leader, it just like the TV show. I mean, it's like, he takes spoilers for who haven't seen the Dragon Ball Super.
Whoa.
Whoa. Yeah, like he,
I'm not about to mute people for 5 minutes.
He's almost invincible. Like,
it's way better than Dragon Ball GT's ending.
A lot of the cards and
we're setting the bar real low.
And a lot of the stuff that I see in the Dragon Ball Super
the Perfect TCG has turned into let's argue about Dragon Ball Super and Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah,
this turns into the Nerd Crew podcast.
Okay, boys, you're getting off the rails here.
To be clear, I believe actually a lot of our people who are actually interested in hearing us talk, I don't think they wouldn't appreciate some Dragon Ball Z spice in their life. But to be clear, we are very derailed at this moment.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, if we could raise hands, who believes Dragon Ball Panini simulated Dragon Ball Z better? And on a count of 3, you just raise your hand.
This is on audio too, so we're just gonna have to say
2,
I do.
3, I do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Kevin, okay. So who believes Dragon Ball Super does it better?
Me.
Mike. Okay. So I'm not trying to point out anything negative. I'm just saying, to be clear to our audience, that is our opinion on that segment.
And
also,
if you have
I think it's interesting.
Opinion, it's a low sample size.
And you're wrong. Mm-hmm. You're wrong if you have a different opinion.
Also, I think it's real interesting to point out that I was not the first one to bring up fighting games this time.
Good man.
I know. I was going to bring that up too.
Dude,
okay,
you can't bring up fighting games without Dragon Ball Z Budokai. Let's go.
Right.
Guys, no, let me get this back on the rails, okay? So,
see me in Budokai 3.
Dylan, so it's true that 3 of the 4 of us agree with that, but that doesn't necessarily matter.
No, it's not representative of anything outside of this.
Except for the topic of we're trying to decide what we think would make the best TCG. And let me throw this out to you.
Okay.
If you were going to play this perfect TCG, okay, in your head, it's like in your head, this idea of, man, this would be the greatest TCG ever.
Mm-hmm.
Would you prefer a dude's attack game like Dragon Ball Super, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, Final Fantasy, whatever? Would you prefer a game that is more like a one-on-one with attack block stuff like Dragon Ball Z, Score and Panini, UFS? There's others. What's that new one called? Crucible of War is the latest.
To clarify,
Flesh and Blood.
Dude's Attack.
Blood, what I'm thinking.
Dude's Attack. Yu-Gi-Oh and Final Fantasy are actually very similar, right? Like you attack one at a time. But Yu-Gi-Oh, you attack. I'm just curious. I'm trying to think because I haven't played Yu-Gi-Oh in a long time. It is a dude's attack for sure.
You prefer dude's attack, Dylan?
No. Sorry, I was saying they're both dude's attack for sure. I'm actually interested on Mike and Kevin's opinion before I state my own.
Okay, so Mike, what would you prefer?
Yes.
Mike likes all card games. I understand.
Yes.
You gotta pick.
I love both.
If you had to pick one for your best,
both have their metric. Either or could be the top TCG. depending upon how they build it and the license, everything
That's
else.
a fair answer. The card design around the entire thing, but that could be the answer.
Mike
for
would
every
rather
game.
die not giving an answer, and that's fine. So he likes it.
That's my answer.
Kevin, what do you think?
For me, though, I think it depends on the game itself. Like, for something like Score and Panini, I would never want that to be some variation of Dude's Attack. That is like you are playing as a character fighting against another character.
It's very much a role-playing game.
Exactly. So for that, absolutely. But for other games like Digimon and Dragon Ball, that's kind of the one thing I don't like about Dragon Ball Super is that it kind of mixes the two. But like Digimon, Yu-Gi-Oh, those function very well, and they're built around to be Dude's Attack games. So I think it depends on the game.
It does depend on the game. It's a hard...
No one's giving a hard answer here. Come on.
Sorry, it does depend. I mean, it really does. Like,
okay.
I like both games. Like, don't get me wrong. I love both style of games, and I will play both style of games. I'm not prefer one or the other.
I'll throw you a line, Dan.
Thank you.
If I put Final Fantasy jerseys on and played basketball, would I be playing basketball or a Final Fantasy game?
You'd be a weeb.
I love
For sure.
this question. Yeah, I love this. That's great. You would be playing basketball.
Thank you. So, if I was wearing a basketball jersey and playing in a Final Fantasy party, fighting a monster in turn-based combat, would you say I'm playing Final Fantasy or I'm playing basketball?
Final Fantasy.
Don't give Square Enix any ideas.
Your skin doesn't determine what you are. It's what you're doing.
Well, and that's
Leatherface is
very deep, very profound. And...
Leatherface is still Leatherface, no matter whose face he's wearing.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
But this is so I believe 2 out of 3 have clarified their point. So I'm saying that the game should mold around the concept. Like the skin doesn't make the game. And it's the concept and the game have to unify in order to make something good. I don't think role playing, I don't think the Panini Z would be. Which to be clear, I love that. I love that role playing. It's so cool. It's one of the things that makes me want to try UFS once My Hero Academia comes out. To be 100% clear, it's a very unique thing that I think this form of TCG can bring to the table, where it doesn't feel like Magic. Like, and again, I'm not a guy who's played Magic very much, but it also doesn't feel like Final Fantasy, right? They're very different in that I think Final Fantasy is suited to Dude's Attack because Final Fantasy is as a game. The video games are designed around parties, and parties wage war against other parties. I could take that for many other things, like Fire Emblem. Fire Emblem is a turn-based party. I've never played Fire Emblem, but if I saw Fire Emblem, I would think...
I love that dating sim.
Yeah, I would think that you'd want to do that. Persona 5. One of my favorite IPs ever. Speaking of dating sims, that's actually why I brought it up. I would consider that a party system. But a lot of people go, well, yeah, Persona is actually a lot like Pokemon. So maybe it's better as a Pokemon-esque card game. If it pulled from that. So, my point at the end is that, I understand, a harsh answer. I prefer the role-playing because I think that's just such a cool little spice. And
it's
unique, and who the hell doesn't want to be Goku, right? We talked about that podcasts ago. Dude, I want to be Goku. He's cherished by the people around him. He does nothing but he's a little selfish, but he absolutely loves absolutely, and he will sacrifice himself for the people that he cares.
So I will
that's a
say,
wonderful person.
Yeah. Just
Dragon Ball Super isn't Goku.
No, well, I was gonna say,
fair.
Be careful what you're saying there. No, I'm not gonna give out any spoilers, but be careful.
We're not gonna.
Dragon Ball Super isn't Goku.
Dragon Ball Super lore podcast. All right, guys.
Toyo
No.
Toyo Taro was never a good writer.
To be clear, he's an incredible artist. But to be clear,
yes.
I will. If you want to bring up Dragon Ball Super, bring up the Dragon Ball Super movies because they are written and have a heavy influence by Akira Toriyama, and I will follow that into canon every day. But I will not, like, Dragon Ball Super's Goku turned Goku into a joke, and I love it. I love Dragon Ball Super, to be clear. I love it. But it's a different character.
Doesn't know what kissing is,
and
he has
we're outside.
two kids.
We're off.
We're off topic. We're done with that.
Okay. Well, back to card games for just a minute, because what you were saying about like Persona made me think there is a really good example of a game that kind of combines both of those, and that's Weiss Schwarz, where it is a dude's attack game. Yeah, exactly. It is a dude's attack game, but the flavor on the cards, because they are within their own sets, you can't mix from other sets.
For those of you watching the audio-only version, Dan made like the biggest puffy face I've ever seen him make at Kevin's comment.
I'm waiting for
just
Kevin
continue,
to finish.
but like I had to clarify that.
He doesn't like Weiss?
Go ahead, finish, Kevin. Go ahead.
Finish.
Okay. No, I was saying that is one example that it combines dude's attack with the flavor of the IP and the characters that it comes from. That game does a really good job of that. That's all I wanted to say.
I've never played Weiss Schwarz, but I'd like to. Sounds neat.
So
Dan's reeling.
Weiss Schwarz, or Weiss Schwarz, if you want to pronounce it that way. I don't know. You sure can. That game has to be fair, I have not checked in that game for a number of years. Okay, I don't know if this has changed. Weiss Schwarz is a fantastic way to collect artwork of your favorite anime characters.
Of your waifus.
Yes, absolutely. I own plenty of them still. I have a ton of the Fairy Tail set because I really liked that anime, and and that's totally cool. And I think they nail card design from a graphical perspective. Chase cards, like we talked about last episode, I'm pretty sure Bandai took ideas from Bushiroad when they were making Super. But from a game perspective, the cards from set to set, there are so many cards that do exactly or nearly exactly the same thing between every different anime.
That's rough, bud.
These are not cards where you can look at them and go, "Oh yeah, that's exactly what Lucy or Natsu or JoJo or whatever would do." The Kirito, they are just the same effects over and over. It's like, okay, in this set, Yellow got another thing that it's been so long, I don't even remember what they do. I'm not even going to try, but like...
Okay, you are right. To be fair, I should clarify, I only started playing with JoJo, and from where I started, when I started playing with the JoJo set, I'm like, oh, these are JoJo cards, because they incorporate the stands and all those abilities really well. The older versions, I 100% believe that you're right in that regard. I'm only speaking from where I started forward.
I have a rare nice thing to say about Metacross. Can I say it?
Yes. Absolutely.
Please.
I loved the design of the Attack on Titan set. I loved the character design and the fluff, and like all the characters were like, the Titans were big, bashy, girthy, awesome, like and enemies, whereas like the companies were all very like flavorful to their company. I think if the entire game was designed like that, that game might have survived.
Okay. I'm going to respond to that, and then I'm going to try and tie a bow on this and move us on. Okay, so nobody distract me with Dragon Ball Super lore, please. No, get out of here, Mike. So, I agree completely. Set 1 was designed, Justice League was set 1 for Metacross, was designed so generically that I think it put things on a rough foot from the outset. Set 2, Green Lantern, was tribal, but too many tribes. Set 3 was Attack on Titan, and that's where I think things were figured out, where like, how many different tribes you can support and how to differentiate them well enough. It felt like it got the DBZ TCG vibe of like
oh, friends are friends, so play with them. Like I got that huge vibe from Attack on Titan, and I really dig
Batman was my favorite set.
In my opinion, Batman was the pinnacle. It was the best set that we, and I have to say again, I was on the development team, so of course I have a bias here, but like I think we nailed the flavor and the fluff in Batman. Each of those tribes was potent, interesting to play, had multiple variations you could play within them. You could mix certain ones together to make some interesting combos. And I think that set was awesome. Although I totally understand. I think, Dylan, from your perspective, you're just more of an anime / Attack on Titan fan than like DC Comics.
I love Batman Beyonds and Batman the Animated Series. I love good flavor. I didn't love playing... I appreciate how Universes is attempting to bring in multiple IPs, and they have successfully brought in multiple IPs. I believe a lot of people were a little burnt out by the 3 out of 4 sets of DC 100%. Universe. And
100%.
And I think that no matter how good the card design of Batman was, I wasn't excited because it was another 40% of the card pool dedicated to Batman characters. So, like, I don't know how much, but I mean, 100% of the card pool was dedicated in that set to Batman characters. Let alone the Black Lantern Batman, who, by the way, that's beautiful art. And the other Batmans. But I just think like you could design a great game, but when you promise like variety and then you deliver the game design, like sometimes some people are going to get turned off by the lack of that variety. Because if Batman did carry on that great design that I liked from Attack on Titan, I really think that card game could have went somewhere. I think maybe if we opened up the lanes a little more, but I really like.
Dan, as a huge Batman fan, I'm literally surrounded by Batman stuff as we speak. I will say you guys did nail it, and that's why it's my favorite set.
Yeah, the engine of that game was great. Could you imagine if that game could get the different IPs and they got, they could get,
I would argue that I didn't particularly like the engine, but I appreciated the people that were making them and the idea behind it.
Well, yeah, but if they got,
not everything's perfect.
All right, guys, let me wrap this up now.
What's your take, Mia?
So, I think what we've done here over this past about half hour of just kind of going back and forth on flavor, abstraction, simulation, Dragon Ball Super lore, etc. I think the big thing we've highlighted, though, is that card games fall within a pretty big gradient of how much simulation versus how much abstraction and what's in the middle. I think the Metacross point is an interesting and really, really important one to bring up because that is a game where, Mike, you just used the term yourself, right? It has an engine, and it simply skinned over that engine with different themes from set to set and tried to tie things together. Now, I think the point we were trying to make earlier towards Dragon Ball Super was that I think it's quite possible to do that with the Dragon Ball Super system as well. But like we pointed out, it's also possible to do that with, Score Z, Panini Z, and really, ultimately, there are very few TCGs that you can't finagle a way to reskin something else over them and make it work out.
Yeah.
What it comes down to, though, is how much you want these... Simulation has a cost. High simulation has a cost. And Mike, you were bringing this up perfectly earlier. The cost of simulation is really, when you break down to it, it's clunkiness. Okay? You can make something perfectly simulate Dragon Ball Z Fusion Dance, right? But, or for example, the Potara Fusion, right? But then there are weird things, weird corner cases you might have to try and account for to try and make that simulation work to be as perfectly simulated as possible. On the other hand, you can just say, you know what? I'm going to get rid of some of that simulation. We're just going to make it simple so that we don't have to worry about, okay, but what happens if the earrings come off, And then that's where you get the Dragon Ball Super system of these two guys fuse. Now they're bigger. Now now there's the Vegito that comes down.
Oh.
And when it comes down to it, both are completely valid systems, and both do kind of what you want. If I never got to put in my take, but I tend to like games that are a little more simulation based. I started with this Star Wars customizable card game from Decipher. If anyone here listening to the podcast played that game, you know very well what happens when simulation goes too far. And there's these cards that have lists of exact card names that they counter because that's what Chewbacca would do in that situation or whatever. And like it was crazy. I appreciate that. I love that part of it. It's not a modern design though. Modern designs tend to be more abstracted. That's just kind of how they go these days.
Well,
yeah, sometimes the realities of game design will just clash with that simulation aspect.
Yeah, look at any of the Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball Super games. How do you make Krillin relevant compared to Goku when they come to power level? Right?
I mean,
exactly.
I think Yamcha did a great
You
job.
have to abstract some amount.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that also comes across in fighting games too, because it's like, just because like in Dragon Ball Fighters, technically, who's the strongest character, but Yamcha's still one of the best characters in the game, even though he would get obliterated in canon by anyone in the show.
Very true. Very true.
So the next thing that I wanted to talk about that we just kind of hinted at the end of the last episode was the idea that there's a lot of things that we can improve outside of just, the game mechanics itself to make this perfect TCG, the perfect TCG. So one of the things that I mentioned right at the tail end, and I knew it would start a conversation, but I just wanted to tease you guys anyway, was the idea of obviously a digital platform for a card game. And I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I feel like the Perfect TCG has its own digital implementation outside of Untap or Tabletop Simulator as well. Does anyone have a hot take on that, or does everyone share that?
I agree. If done right, 100%.
100%. It's very difficult, but when it works, it does wonders for a game.
So that's the big thing. When you say it's difficult, it's what it really is it's very expensive. And the company has to be able to recoup its costs on what it's doing. So that's why you only see it from like Magic the Gathering with Arena so Lightseekers is an interesting one we can talk about that started as a digital TCG and then decided to go physical afterwards. And they also did that with that same company made Age of Sigmar Champions in the Warhammer universe as well, which was another game
I forgot about that.
Yeah, it was short-lived. It's interesting because I don't think either of those are for me the perfect TCG for various other reasons, but we have seen it happen a few times outside of Arena, but it's usually a digital TCG then deciding, you know what, I bet we can make money if we print physical. And based on how those games went, their bet might not have actually panned out the way they were expecting.
Yeah, and it's like you have to do it well too, because almost worse than having no digital platform is half-assing it.
Yep.
Absolutely. And we talked plenty about this in the Arena episode, but I think all of us at least were in agreement that Arena's platform was a pretty good way to do it at the very worst.
Yeah, it's the only way I play Magic.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people like that.
So minus a couple
has
sections
to be
of tutorial, I thought that it was the best digital card game experience I've had.
For sure.
And I've had a lot of them.
So outside of just the idea of, putting boatloads of money into making a digital version of the game, do you guys have any other things you think a company needs to do in order to make their card game perfect?
I thought about this a little before we started recording today. There's a really good series of videos on YouTube. The guy's channel name is Kodok, Kohdok.
I knew you were going to refer to him. Yep, he's great.
Oh, yeah. The 7 Deadly Sins of TCG Design. They're really good videos. I highly recommend them. And one of the things he was kind of talking about that made me think was he was talking about reminder text. And I want to expand that into clarification for game text. When you design a game, and I think a lot of games, they start out really clunky and then they'll simplify it over time. But you need to have simple, clear, and concise game text. So no matter how good your game is, if no one understands what the heck you're talking about, it's not going to do any good.
for sure.
Yeah, and I want to say that I think Kodak's videos are awesome. I have disagreed with him on a few points. Actually, Mike, you'll like this.
Oh,
he has
me too.
an episode that is 100% about why life decks like in Dragon Ball Z Panini aren't good. And
I completely disagree with that.
he brings up some good points, but I still side on enjoying them as a mechanic in the right context. But
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
but yeah, his videos are awesome. I think listeners should definitely check those out if they want more opinions. That's what he does. I watched them all because it's a lot like what we were looking at doing for this podcast initially, which is just talking about TCGs in general. So I got sucked into his whole series because they're interesting and he has great points. So I wanted to say that tournament circuit needs to be something that it has to happen right away. The only reason we really stick with these physical card games is for the community. The community needs to exist in order for it to be something that we want to invest in heavily. And the community doesn't truly exist unless everyone sort of has this thing. Even if you're just going to be a kitchen table player, you don't intend to be like, I'm gonna go win worlds or whatever. Having the sights, being able to set your sights higher on something to aspire to, even at the local level, will get people into the shop to play frequently. That's
There
how
has
you
to
keep
be
the community
support.
going. Yes, so you need organized play. Does it need to be $1 million circuit? No,
Absolutely not.
definitely not. But
One of the
there needs to be
biggest-
something.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. One of the biggest mistakes Transformers made was there was no OP for that entire first set, and I felt that set it back so far
Yeah.
that although they did add it later on, I felt like it was just a big mistake to not have it at the beginning.
That also led to Metacross's demise as well. It just OP never really materialized. So, and we're not going to go into all the myriad reasons why that could have been, but
To clarify,
Yeah,
to jump off of both of
Sorry.
your guys' points. No, you're fine. I kind of interjected. You didn't interrupt me. I interrupted you. To clarify off of both of your points that I think is extremely important is because when Kevin mentioned concise language, I think that is actually more important in rule structure and so like in rule structure, so like the rules that explain the game design. So that
sure.
you can have a clear, clean, organized play. Because if people are arguing card effects or they're trying to like weasel out of certain things, because some people will take. I try to look at people as a general positive. I think most people are good, but I understand that some people, when put in a situation where they feel like they can gain something, will compromise themselves morally in order to achieve that. And if you don't have a clear rule system for how to A, handle those situations, B, how to discern card text and abilities and what they do, you're not going to have a good organized play or a good game at all, to be perfectly fair.
Don't be score Saiyan Saga.
Yep. So you
Yeah,
just have to have
absolutely
you have to
don't
have
do
a
that.
quick
Or saying Saga.
and off of that you have to have a quick resolution to broken is a word that's thrown around a lot, but broken mechanics, and that would also piggyback into the communication that we mentioned last episode.
Mhm.
Where I think a great thing that the Final Fantasy TCG does, and I'm not trying to go off that, that's just the one that I know, is the lead card designer, the producer of the game, Toru Kageyama. Great Kageyama-san, I appreciate you. He has his Twitter open and for questions, and he
Oh wow.
people refer to his Twitter for that. So like if you ever have like a question on like a new mechanic, or hey, this is worded a little differently, because for those of you who don't know, the game is initially Japanese. Its initial translation is Japanese, and it gets translated to North America. And for the
Which
first
is
5 sets
task.
or so, yeah, it is. Yes, yes.
That's a huge hurdle that Final Fantasy impressively overcomes very well. There is an inherent language barrier in the card creation.
Yep.
So
So a few a few of the earlier sets, it was a little harder. There were some stumbles. Cards such as Death Machine, which is, if anybody's interested, you can just Google FFTCG Death Machine. I'm sure it'll pop up on the Reddit. The North American card and the Japanese card did not read the same. And the card effect was really, really broken if you didn't read it the same. The card said basically you paid 5 and it sits on the field, and at the end of your opponent's turn, they select a forward and put it into the break zone, and at the end of your turn, you select one. Basically, or you can put Death Machine into the break zone. So basically, it was you could play cards that wouldn't break when selected, or so you could get around it. But Death Machine, I believe his intentional writing was you have to break one or else it gets broken. So you couldn't get around the effect in the Japanese version. Both players have to sack things, whereas in the English version it was, oh well, you can choose one as long as they've been chosen. So if you put cards that some cards just can't be broken by card effects, right? So you could heavily get around that and make it a one side negative every turn. That's another good point when it comes to constructing, like we say, the perfect TCG. If there are multiple different countries that play the same game, you have to try the best. And I know it's difficult, but parity between different regions is really important. And to be clear, like Dan had said, it does a very good job in spite of that. And that is 100% on the game designers picking a great translation team and everybody that understands each other, which might sound like a pun, but it's the ultimate goal in that.
Kevin, you brought up something that I want to hit on, which is that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is my prime example for this, for a game that has a Japanese version with Japanese exclusive cards and a global version that has, a different set of exclusive cards. And
absolutely.
My Perfect TCG would not have that. I wouldn't even dream of ever going that
sounds
route.
Bad to me.
Because it's just not...
The TCG OCG thing is a nightmare.
In fact, just simply having the delayed release of the global version to the Japanese one is super problematic, because then one side of the world gets to see what happens. They have information before the set releases. They know what's good, what's bad, and the only reason... Yeah. I'm not going to get too hyperbolic about this, but Konami puts in, at least they used to. Again, I haven't checked in a while, but we had a commenter who went on one of our YouTube videos and said, "Yeah, you guys are right. They still do this. They put in, English only versions in sets, and part of the reason they do that is to be able to sell it to people after they've already seen how all these other cards play out, or oh, the broken card didn't get printed. We got to put some new stuff in that they haven't seen, so that there's something enticing.
They're playing a different game, basically.
Yeah, and it's just, it's sort of sleazy in a way, and it's sort of just there were so many cards that I remember when I was playing. I think, man, I wish we had that card. That would be fun for me to play in my deck. I would get to enjoy playing that, but I can't because I play the English version. So it's just a weird route to take, and I just can't condone it at all.
We are talking about Konami here, so R.I.P. Metal Gear, Silent Hill, Castlevania, Contra.
Yeah, yep. I don't think we're going to get Konami as a sponsor on this podcast anytime soon. So that's probably fine.
Pull the lever.
Did you guys have any other elements you want to talk about? Oh, I want to say one more thing about Dylan, what you were saying. I think now you can't look to them for everything, just to be clear. I don't think every decision that this company makes is correct, but if anyone is an aspiring TCG designer out there looking to try and make their next TCG kind of hit the market big or something, you are doing a disservice to yourself if you don't look at what Wizards of the Coast has done so far. Yep. If you want to talk about clear, concise rulings, I will always stand behind Wizards of the Coast, who does this, I think, impeccably. Their comprehensive ruling document, it's 1,000 pages at this point. But if you have a question about a rule, the answer's in there. It is
Control
clear,
F that.
night and day. It's not even like, ooh, I think you could interpret this one way. No, I don't. I can't think of a scenario where it isn't exactly perfectly laid out for you by just finding the correct parts on there. And that doesn't mean you have to like learn to read that, but it means that the judges who you can refer to can give you the exact answer. When a card gets printed, actually when the set comes out, they print on their website. This is I'm blanking on exactly what they call it, but they have basically an FAQ for the entire set when a new set releases, and it has every card there, and it goes through corner cases that you might see, like, oh, what would happen if I took control of this creature or something.
It has
that's what happens for the owner. And
that
kind of
that
thing
comes
is
from
important to do.
experience.
What's that, Kevin?
No, I say that comes from experience because they've been around for so long.
100%, and it should be a thing where we stand on the shoulders of giants for this. Like, absolutely, you should just. Every company should at least look at what they're doing and think, how can we do something that at least gets that level of knowledge and information out there? It doesn't mean you have to do exactly the same thing. And props to Bandai, because Dragon Ball Super has a nice comprehensive ruling document also. They are not 100% spot on getting the rulings worded correctly when they do like FAQ stuff or whatever. That they have mistakes. I think the language barrier is a big part of that we
translation is definitely a big issue.
I'd be curious to know who was the longest running and potentially oldest person on their design team, because Magic, as we know, is about 30 years old now, isn't it? Is it 35? So I'm curious if there's anybody that's been designing cards for like 25, 27 years on their team.
It's possible
because that's awesome, right? Like if you think about that, like I'm turning 26 next week, and there are people who have been working on Magic the Gathering longer than I've been alive. So my TCG experience is what, maybe 6 years old. Their TCG experience is probably beyond that, and then they've been designing for that long. Like that's just it's a hard bar to pass. Specifically, I mean not specifically, but in light of that.
So Mark Rosewater and Dylan, he's basically like the Kageyama-san of Magic. He's
cool.
I don't know his exact term. He's the head creative director or something. He's the main guy.
Sure.
He came on, if I remember the story right, he came on during Tempest, which was, I went and checked it out, is 1997 was when that set released. And he has been an integral part of like sort of guiding Magic's design since he was designing.
That's really cool.
Then.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so Magic absolutely has the history that I think all TCGs need to look at. And now, like I said, not every decision they make is right, but I think you are objectively wrong if you're a designer of a game and you're not like at least looking at what they're doing and trying to see, okay, what worked, what didn't, what's good, what's bad, and how can I use this to inform how I can make my TCG the best it possibly can be.
I mean, how many games other than like sports last more than 30 years? Like, or 20 years, or 10 years even.
For sure.
Like,
I mean,
how many of those games, like, what, D&D? Right? Like,
sure.
Like,
Even
some
something
board
like
games,
Street
like
Fighter.
super casual board games, like Connect 4 and stuff. Like, imagine designing a super complicated game that has interwoven parts that like get refreshed every 3 months, and like the entire sets go out, and like keeping people around for like 20 plus years. Like that's a pretty magnificent undertaking.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So I think that's probably a great place to wrap this up. I think we honestly could have just kept going and going and going with tons more things that TCGs
Part
can do,
3, part
right
4.
or wrong.
Yeah.
So
right.
maybe we'll revisit this sometime in the future. But next week we're going to change topics, change gears a little bit, talk about something else.
We're going to talk about
I
Dragon Ball Super next week.
No.
Heck yeah, we're gonna red letter media the hell out of it.
Wait a minute. Next week I might be at my tournament. Don't do that. No, wait a week.
No, I'm
Get
I'm
away.
It's the
kidding,
perfect
I'm
time to
kidding.
do
Oh,
it.
good.
It would
Mike will be
be
gone, so we can make fun of Dragon Ball Super again.
It could be a great dude. I've been on that train the entire episode today. I'm not sure if you've been here, but I've been here. No,
I am
just
kidding though. We all do like Super for different elements and different things we like about it. Mike is just fun to tease about it. So
Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken is like one of the coolest designs. Like it's such a wonderful art. It's actually the art that I asked Dan to reference off for my Twitch.
Which I haven't gotten time to do yet.
Once he gets to, it's fine.
Jiren's the word.
But yeah, that might be a fun extra bonus episode.
Hit
me up
that
if
is
you
what
think
it's
that's
perfect
fun.
for. So, speaking of
you
bonus
better bring me on
episodes,
for that.
Thank you for pointing that out.
You're welcome.
If you guys do enjoy what you're listening to and want a little bit extra, we have not yet posted October's bonus episode, but we will be getting that up sometime this month. We have a Patreon. Patreon.com/MetaManiacs. You can support us for as low as $2 a month. You get access to additional podcast episodes that are going to be about completely random stuff sometimes. Like, I guess we're probably going to do a Dragon Ball Super one at some point, talking about the lore of the show and what we like and what we dislike. And I think there was talk about a cereal one. So just going to tease that out there if people want to fight about their favorite or hear us fight about our favorite cereals.
There's literally a fighting game based on cereal mascots coming out next year.
Okay, so we need Kevin on that one for sure.
Cookie Crisp.
But otherwise, guys, if you did enjoy this, if you did enjoy listening to this, please go ahead, hit like button on YouTube, subscribe to us on your favorite podcast. I'm clearly at the end of my wits here. Podcast network, and otherwise. Thank you so much for watching or listening. We really do appreciate you guys tuning in. You guys are the reason we do this, and I love hearing your comments and hearing your feedback. We've had a few people saying over the past week that they look forward to listening every week, and I mean I feel that. I really, really love that. So
it's really cool.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Thanks to our patrons for supporting us and letting us keep this dream alive. And from all four of us, we will see you guys at the very next episode of the MetaManiacs show. Take care, guys.
See you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.